Good morning, everyone, and welcome to IGTV. I've got with us this morning ML Kingsley and Chuck Manto, and we're going to be talking about EMP. So, ML, why don't you give us a setup on this? What's going on?
Well, thank you, Joe, for having us this morning. We're from Maryland. I'm with the Maryland InfraGard. Chuck Manto, our guest, is a member. And he's here to, I'm ML Kingsley, and he's here to tell us about EMP, which is a little known but very imposing threat, electromagnetic pulse. And we're going to talk in three segments. I guess you could call it the ABC of EMP. And Chuck is also, in the real world, the CEO of Instant Access Networks, and he has, besides 5 patents under his belt, he has some extraordinary expertise. And Chuck, I'd like to, first of all, say thank you for being here, and I understand you'll be telling us in 3 easy pieces. The A component would be about EMP, what it is and why it's a threat, why now. The second part B would be what's being done with National Defense University and some other heavy hitters. And C really can be. And all this in the context of the InfraGard EMP Special Interest Group, which Chuck is now heading. So Chuck, take it away.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I guess there's a couple of ways to think about EMP. First of all, electromagnetic pulse can be a representation of a whole class of threats that are very unusual because they could, if done well, create a nationwide catastrophic collapse of infrastructure. That is something that we haven't planned for in this country, and that's why we're going to talk about that more in the other couple of segments. But EMP can be itself happen in several ways. Number one, you could have an upper atmosphere nuclear device, preferably over 10 miles high as 300 miles, depending on the size of the weapon, could disrupt and damage infrastructure in a region of the country, for example, the East Coast of Chicago, if you took a 10-kiloton weapon and detonated it 80 miles high. If you had a more sizable weapon or one with a lot of sloppy gamma rays coming out, you could detonate it 300 miles over the center of the United States and impact the continent. We've known about that a long time during the Cold War, and there's been a lot of concern about it recently. The Congress actually created a commission to evaluate that. Basically, I led some folks to do a economic impact assessment of even a regional scenario, where you would have a smaller weapon detonated, say, by a terrorist shooting it off of a freighter a couple of hundred miles off coast.
Almost like a Mumbai scenario with a big wrinkle.
Yes, and what happens in a case like that, we showed that if you look at the economy from Richmond to Baltimore, you could have a $40 to a $770 billion impact on the economy in basically a split second, depending on whether it's a low, medium, or high impact scenario. There are a couple other ways, though, that EMP can happen. You can have small radio frequency weapons, which, of course, is something that you can take inside a briefcase and damage to a localized environment, for example, your security system, your banking system, and so on. Or you could also experience it through a natural phenomenon through solar storms or other space weather. What they're concerned about now, which is different, as to why there's such interest in the last couple of years, is that solar storms are now being considered far more dangerous than they had been in the past. In 1989, for example, there was a Quebec-wide or province-wide collapse of infrastructure or the power grid for 9 hours. There's some places maybe were without power for a week or so. And scientists have known that we could have much larger solar storms, and the thought was maybe the entire East Coast might go out for a week or so. when people would see the aurora borealis, for example, at the equator due to the 100-year solar storm. Instead, what they discovered is that some solar storms could have a lot more frequent fluctuations. This pseudo direct current inject into our alternating current power grids, which could cause the destruction of as many as 350 or so of our largest transformers.
Well, why don't I interrupt you at this point, and why don't we get back to more of that right after this commercial, all right? And we're talking with Chuck Manto, and we're defining the problem, EMP, electronic magnetic pulse. Do I have that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so we're going to get back into more of that right after this PSA coming up from FEMA. All right, folks?